Hi all, welcome to the Riot Lunch and Learn series, the place where we spotlight Riot sponsors and partners. My name is Natalie Ballard. I'm the Events and Operations Manager for Riot. Just a couple quick reminders before we get started. This event is being recorded and will be posted to Riot's YouTube channel and uploaded to the meetup page where you registered for this event. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please place them in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat and will read the questions aloud throughout the presentation. Questions are read aloud for those watching the presentation at a later date. Finally, please keep yourself muted throughout the event to help mitigate background noise. Today, we have Brian Palladino with NextUp Solutions to discuss Trust But Verify, how to select a trusted IT partner. Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Natalie, and welcome everyone. It's great to be here today, and I hope that I can share some valuable experience with you. So, as Natalie said, the title of today's presentation is Selecting a Trusted IT Partner, where we're going to talk about some vetting tactics for optimizing your engagement with technology partners that might work with your organization. So who am I? My name is Brian Palladino. I'm a lead software development engineer and mentor at Acceleration. I have about 23 years of experience in software development and consulting. In that time, I have gained experience with dozens of different companies and organizations of many different sizes and different fields, from industry to government agencies to nonprofits and industry associations. So I have a very wide array of different kinds of experience. In addition, I'll take a few moments to talk a little bit about where I work. My company, Acceleration, is a software development firm, which does essentially a lot of the kind of things that we're going to talk about today. So this is a not so subtle plug for our services. If after today's presentation, you'd like to start exploring some of these things, feel free to reach out to us. We can help you with your software development and consulting needs. And in addition, I'd like to also mention that another division of my company, NextUp Solutions, provides agile training and coaching services. So in addition to technical solutions, they can also supplement how your organization works through agile training and coaching and agile transformation efforts. So what are the goals of our talk today? What I want to do is empower you with a little bit more knowledge and confidence to navigate a technical discussion, especially if you're coming from a place where you may not have a lot of technical background or where you may not have worked with IT partners much in the past. Why are we having this discussion? Well, it's so that you can try to make the best possible choice for your business the first time out and hopefully avoid costly mistakes. So there's lots of different questions that you may have over the course of the talk that we're going to be discussing. So for example, you might have questions about your working relationship with a potential IT partner. Things like, how often will I see results? How do I give feedback or get feedback? Who am I working with? You might also have questions over, from the financial side of things, ROI, how do you get what you pay for? How much should I pay for these services? And what should I be getting for our money? And we'll also talk about some legal and contractual questions about things like, do I actually own the software that we produce? And what do I actually get? One quick note that I'll make is my experience is entirely on the software development side. So depending on what your technology needs are, this presentation is geared mainly towards software development and building some sort of software or like a website or some sort of system that your company might use. I have less experience on the hardware or infrastructure side, but I think some of the general principles that we'll be talking about here would also apply to those efforts. So let's start at the beginning. How do we start preparing ourselves for this journey of working with external partners? The first and most important thing you have to start with is having a good understanding of what are you trying to accomplish. You want to find a trusted IT partner so that you can achieve some sort of goal. So a trusted partner, what do we mean by that? We mean a partner that gives you honest answers and clearly explains the areas that you don't understand so that you can make good business decisions. What a trusted partner does is helps you navigate areas where you don't know what you don't know. So as you can see, the very scientific and statistical graph that I have added, I spent an hour on this in Excel. As everybody starts off in this process, there are things that you know, things that you don't know, and a lot of things that you don't know. And that's where a trusted IT partner can come in and can help. So the idea is getting that outside assistance allows you to focus on the business value of the ideas, not the implementation. If you are not a coder, you don't want to teach yourself to code so you can write a system. You can get someone else who can do that so that you can focus on what's the business value you want to get out of it. So before you start looking around for options, one of the biggest questions you need to ask is, are your ducks in a row? What is the problem that you are trying to solve? How is technology going to help you solve this problem? Maybe in some cases, I've worked with lots of companies where they were exploring technical solutions that really were for organizational problems, and they, some cases, could fix the problem by just adjusting their processes internally, and that adding certain new technical features were not necessary. So what is the problem, and how are you going to use technology to help you solve it? As you're working out those questions, you can start thinking about whether or not there are specific technical limitations or approaches that are required. And depending on the depth of your technical knowledge and experience and what kind of technical resources you have in-house, you can ask, do you need external help finding the answers to any of these questions? Are these things that you cannot answer in-house with your existing staff or with your own personal knowledge? So some of the organizations out there that look for external partners, perhaps some of you on this call, you may already have an existing product or a system that you want to add to. One question to ask is, do you need a CTO, potentially a full-time CTO or a fractional or part-time CTO? There are some organizations that I've worked with in the past that may have developed some kind of a system and then decided that it was sort of a sideline where they were doing it to fill a very specific niche, didn't take a lot of time or manpower to maintain it. But then over time, it grew in its functions and became more and more important, and they needed to devote more resources to it. Or in other cases, I worked with organizations that had something that started out in-house, and they decided to try and sell it as a public product, as a product to the public. So you may have an existing system that is growing beyond your ability to manage it, and maybe you need to look into, for example, a full-time chief technology officer, or perhaps a part-time, someone in your organization or externally who can fulfill that role. In addition, there are also partial development solutions that you can look for. So for example, you may, like I said, you may have an existing system that needs to be enhanced, or you may have some in-house IT staff or developers within your organization, and they need some additional help. So maybe you have people who are developers who work for you, and this process is about finding a partner who can supplement your in-house development capabilities and can help you to properly scope those requirements and drive towards the skill set that you need to get done the parts that you want to enhance or you want to add to. And so both of those areas get at the larger purpose of finding external partners to work with, is to find specialists who are good at things that your team is not. None of us know how to do everything. None of us have the capability to solve all the problems that we might face. So sometimes finding an outside IT partner who you can work with might give you that additional experience or specialized knowledge that lets you fill gaps in what you and your team can do. So we're going to stop and make a distinction between a partner or a consultant service and a developer. So a developer is someone who actually is going to do the technical implementation and write the code and is going to make your product. However, what a partner or a consultant does is a little bit beyond that. We may have developers on our team that may get to building a product, but what an IT partner or an IT consultant will do is help you to build your product. We do the things, and I say we because this is my line of work. This is what I've been doing for over 2 decades. What we do is work with you to really understand your business, your processes, the systems that you need, and help to build something that is tailored for you. As a side little note, the picture on the left is obviously something that you might get just at a bakery or supermarket. The picture on the right is actually a real cake that was made for a former colleague of mine at Acceleration who gave the baker a picture of a unicorn that his daughter drew, and the baker worked with him to make a unicorn cake for her. So you can think of something like that as the difference between just give me a birthday cake and give me this birthday cake that is special to my daughter. So when are you looking for just a developer? When do you need just, supplemental development assistance for your project? Normally that is going to be when your requirements are well-defined and you know exactly what you're looking for. Maybe your organization, like I said, already has some in-house technical capability. You already have developers. You already have detailed technical requirements. You have a team that is working on this. And maybe you just need some supplemental help, maybe to get you over the hump for a specific project, or for a short-term period, you need to engage a couple of additional developers, and you have your own people who can manage them, and you know exactly what you're looking for and what you need them to do. Now, when do you look, on the other hand, for a partner or a consultant to work with you? When your requirements are fluid and changing, and maybe when you don't already have all the answers yet, but you have a vision. So as I said, what partners and consultants do is try to help you figure out the parts that you don't know. So if you're in the process of figuring out what you need and developing your requirements, that's where we can come in. So now I've made it through the beginning of this presentation where we've talked a little bit about what you need to do before you start working to engage with an IT partner. Well, let's talk for a few minutes about, once you've done so, how you will be working with them. So one question to ask is, what am I looking for in a team? Trust me when I say that you want a team, not an individual, even if the team is fairly small. One person is often a problem. If you have a single developer that you hire to build some system, depending on the scale, maybe it's not a big deal if it's something very small, but if you have a larger complex system that's going to take a while to build, very often developers might leave. They might get other jobs. They might get swamped dealing with too many other clients. Having only a single individual to rely on can sometimes be a problem. So very often working with a team or larger organization can help, meaning that if your developers have, or excuse me, your team that you're working with have additional resources that they can pull in if someone leaves, if someone gets overwhelmed, or if someone doesn't necessarily have all the knowledge they need, working with an organization that has a team to work with you means that it's going to be more resilient, and they're going to be more reliable, and they'll be able to get more done for you. So apologies, I just sort of zipped through those points, but essentially the advantage of having a team, as I was saying, they can avoid getting overwhelmed and can handle the loss of a team member without losing that team knowledge base on your system. Another thing that you're looking for in an IT team to partner with is you want people who are excited to communicate technical solutions. Engineers love to talk about solutions. It's what we do, even sometimes when we shouldn't. Sometimes we love to just get into the weeds and talk about the technology, but very often that's a good sign. It means you're working with people who are knowledgeable and who are excited about working out a solution for your problem. The best consultants that you can work with are ones who can't wait to educate a client. If you're not familiar with something, having a consultant or a developer who works with you who can explain the technology and help walk you through it is something that we just love. And that's great for us because when we're working with our customers, I know I like our customers to also have some understanding of the technology because it tends to make my clients and the people I work with both happier and also more helpful to us when we need things. Another thing that you want to look for as you are looking for a team to work with is you want to work with people who are honest about their abilities and their capabilities. You want to find people who are not afraid to tell you that they don't know the answer. I can tell you after decades in this field, there is far too much out there in the field of software development and technology generally for us to know everything. Nobody knows everything. We have to research solutions to problems, look up things all the time. On a daily basis, I'm on Google trying to figure out why I'm having an issue with something or what's the proper way to do something technically. It is a normal part of the process. So you want to work with people who are going to be candid about you when they might have to take some time to do some research on a technical solution, or where they might need to fill certain areas of their team's gaps in knowledge and things like that. It's far better to work with people who are upfront about that than to work with people who oversell their capabilities and convince you that they can do anything. And then you may find out that that's not the case later on. And one thing that you'll want to look for as you engage a partner and as you start to build a relationship with them is you'll want to think about feedback loops. You want to think about ways that you can have some sort of regularly scheduled check-ins with your partner. You want to have milestones. You want to have a regular schedule of meetings and demos so that you can see the value that they're providing for you. We generally recommend that you have at least weekly or bi-weekly meetings with them in order to monitor their progress and provide them with feedback, as well as get feedback from them if they have areas where they need additional information from you, or you can help them remove certain blockers that are slowing down their progress. And as part of this feedback cycle and these meetings, you also want to be setting milestones as you progress with clear deliverables that the team, can give you. So in order to have that feedback loop, you want to develop with them a feedback and review cycle. So a process where you can see what they've produced and evaluate it. And this feedback needs to be captured and made actionable. Those of you who've worked in software development before, one way to do this is we use at Acceleration, we use an agile software development methodology. We normally use some variation of Scrum. So these are methods of development that have demos for product stakeholders built right into the process and have various other mechanisms built into the normal workflow to make sure that a development team is getting regular feedback from the people they're writing the system for, and make sure that they're developing the system in an iterative manner so that problems are caught early, blockers are encountered fast enough to clear them easily, and minimal amounts of rework can be done. So whether you're using an agile methodology like Scrum or something else, you want to have a pretty well-defined feedback and review cycle built into the process. And once again, I'll plug my partner organization, NextUp Solutions. They do agile training and coaching, everyone. And another code component of this feedback loop that you're going to want to discuss with your potential partner is code deployment and management. So you want to know that they have, they're using some sort of a version control system like GitHub or Bitbucket to host your code, and that they have a clearly well thought out code deployment strategy so that they can actually deploy changes that you have to make to different environments. Usually, the proper way to set up a code deployment strategy is to have different environments that can be used at different points in the development cycle. So you might have, for example, an environment, a website, a version of your site that is purely for the developers to do their internal development work and testing. You might have another one that is for your product managers or partners who are working with the team to do testing from the standpoint of your organization and make sure it's meeting your needs. And then, eventually you might have, a QA or some other sort of site for additional review and testing. And finally, you're going to have like a production version of the site or the application, which is what the actual end users will be doing with real data. So a team that you work with, you want to make sure that they have a strategy for how they're going to roll out changes and to different environments. That's something that you'll be working with them to develop. And in addition, you want to make sure that the team you're working with has a code testing strategy. Modern software development best practices are based heavily around various forms of automated tests, like unit tests or user acceptance tests, where we write code that tests the code that we have written. And what that does is, one, make sure that we're producing code that's doing what you expect it to do, what you've told us you want it to do. And two, it provides some security for regression errors in the future. So if we have a very comprehensive suite of automated tests that are testing different scenarios for how the system can be used, and then later we make a modification that breaks something else, good automated tests will catch that breakage so we can fix it before it becomes a problem. So that's another thing that you want to look for, is a team that adopts best practices and uses automated testing in their work. So now let's also talk a little bit about contracts. So before you sign on the dotted line and commit to paying somebody, you want to have some thought given to how to protect yourself in the event that there are issues in the contract, and how to get a clean dismount when it's over. So one of the major types of contracts in software development is what's referred to as time and materials. This is where you have an hourly rate, the development team charges for hours worked, and then maybe additional charges for things like server space or licenses or other tools that they need to complete the job on your behalf. The pros of this system is that it's very flexible. If you're not sure how much work will be needed, how much time it will take, this is fairly open-ended, so it gives you a lot of flexibility. And it means you don't necessarily have to define all the requirements up front. Now, the con of this system is that it can be more difficult to predict costs. And this sort of contract, time and materials, is usually better if your requirements are uncertain. If you're still fleshing out what you want your system to do and what your needs are, time and materials may be a better way to give you that added flexibility you need, because very often it might take longer than you expect it to or want it to especially if you're still in the process of figuring out what you need. Another major contract type in software development is called fixed price. That is where you're given a flat rate for the full body of work. Now, the pros of this is, well, it's one major pro, it has a predictable cost. The cons are, first, the flip side of a time and materials contract. It's inflexible. You have a set amount of money to work with, a set period of time that you can work on. You have to have all of your requirements well fleshed out up front. And it can often, under this, be hard to schedule deliverables. If unexpected circumstances come up, this can sometimes mess up your timeline and can require you to maybe make some hard choices about, well, we only have enough budget to cover certain things. Maybe we have to lose certain features or write a second contract or other things like that. So it makes it, it can make it somewhat less predictable if you run into those sorts of issues. However, that said, this kind of contract can be totally viable if you have very certain and well-developed requirements. Again, if you know what you need and what you're looking for, this may be the way to go. And in addition, there are other companies and consulting firms in the industry that use some kind of hybrid billing model that might do some kind of a mix of both time and materials and fixed price. I have not worked with any of these particular models, so I can't really speak to what these alternatives are, but I know that they are out there. So that's something that you could explore with potential partners and see if they have these kind of hybrid models for their billing system. And who knows, maybe it is a chance to get the best of both worlds. So let's talk about a few more things to think about and to ask when you are meeting with the client and developing the contract. The biggest one is, what if I change my mind after development has started? And you will. No set of requirements survives first contact with the end users and the business needs. It is the most normal thing in the world for requirements to change as you start developing. There's nothing bad about it. It is just the nature of the beast. So put some thought into that and discuss that with your potential partner. You know, how do we handle it if we need to pivot and move things in a different direction once we've started? Now, a related question, what happens if you need to cancel or cut back? Sadly, very often it does happen where perhaps your organization might face a budget cut or manpower limitations or other sort of restrictions that mean that you can't devote the full resources that you originally planned to the project. What kind of provisions would you want in the contract to deal with those sorts of situations? And likewise, you can discuss with your IT service provider, what if they fall behind? It happens. Very often we run into technical difficulties and, or blockers that are out of our control in some cases. And we may fall behind schedule. Getting back to that discussion of feedback loops and how you set up your milestones, you want to have that discussion with them too. So let's talk a little bit about how to get what you pay for. The services of people like me, for better or worse, don't always come cheap. So how can you ensure you're getting the best bang for your buck? As we've already said, milestone payments, having clear milestones are a good way to measure progress, but they can also be tied to acceptance of the code. They can also be tied to paying your provider in increments based on the progress that they make in delivering code. One thing that you want to look for also is a transparency into the hourly rates that drive the amounts that you're charged. Most consultants like me almost always use timesheets. We should be using them so we can accurately reflect the amount of time we're spending on your project, especially if it's a time and materials project where you're being billed hourly, we should be using them, and you should be able to see them if you want to. And as I was just saying, you probably want to work with your provider that upfront to see that you have accommodations for changes built into the plan, so that you can, kind of roll with the punches, and make sure that you're still getting acceptable value for the money that you're paying. And finally, I would highly recommend that you don't make a large down payment on a system if they don't have anything to show for it yet. You probably want to see, again, some of that feedback, something that, some indicator of progress, to know that they're moving in the right direction. It may not be smart to just pay everything upfront all at once. So some more considerations to talk about as you're negotiating a contract with your potential partner. There are some issues that could come up around code delivery and hosting. One of those things is code ownership. Normally, you should expect to own the code and where it's published in most cases. You should make sure that that's in the contract. And related to that, you'll want to talk to your partner about what the end deployment strategy is and plan for maintenance. And we'll talk about that a little more. I have some additional slides about how some of the questions that come up around ongoing maintenance and deployment. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes. But these are areas that you should bring up during your negotiations. One other aspect of negotiating a contract, in addition to code ownership, is idea ownership. I will give full disclosure here. I am not an intellectual property or contract or patent lawyer. I do not know what the law says, but in many cases, your company or your organization may have an idea or certain practices that are copyrighted or patented that you would want to protect that intellectual property. So this slide is just here as a reminder that if you have that situation, you want to make sure that you consult your legal representatives, and if it's a concern, make sure it is accounted for in your contract. So you've thought through all of those things. You've got asked all those questions internally, worked out the best answers you can. You have got a long list of questions to ask your new potential IT partner that you are having a sales meeting with. So what do we talk about on a first date? So the best place to start is to talk about your problem. What is the issue you're trying to solve? Why are you coming to your potential partner in the first place? What do you need their help with? Very often it is also, I'll point out, a good idea to make sure that everyone has signed an NDA. Depending on what you're doing, if you have certain ideas or technical knowledge or other things which are copyright protected or patentable, or that are privileged or private information, you may not want that, to get out even by accident. So it's a good idea sometimes to ask for an NDA. Start asking them and having a conversation with them about how they'll solve your problem. And what you're really looking for here is not necessarily a technical blow by blow. You want more insight into their process and how they go about solving problems and how they go about dealing with your issues. And in addition, talk to them about some of those issues that we asked about, quote unquote, the middle of the project where you're working with them. How do they deliver their code and how do they deploy and things like that. And finally, when they start talking to you about things and when they start making their pitch for their operations and for their business, ask questions about anything you don't understand. A lot of people are afraid to ask questions. They're afraid that they might look like they don't know something, or they're not skilled or knowledgeable. That is not the case. People run into things they don't know all the time. It is much better for you to ask questions about something you don't understand to make sure that you're not later surprised when something that gets proposed means something you didn't think it meant. So all these questions are great, but why? Why are we asking them? As I said, a lot of it is about not necessarily just getting particular answers. It's about seeing how they answer your questions. In the same way that you might pose difficult questions or questions that might not have a single answer to potential candidates for a job at your organization, you want to see how they think, how they solve problems, how they relate to other people, and how they answer your questions. Do they do things like taking the time to carefully explain it to you in terms that you can understand and relate it to your business needs? Do they do things like shower you with vocabulary soup and give you lots of acronyms and technical terms that you don't understand? Maybe if they do, that might be a bit of a red flag. It might mean they're trying to sort of overwhelm you so that you don't ask more probing questions and don't dig deeper. So the right partner will be eager and excited to answer your questions and to explain everything that you don't understand. So again, asking questions of your potential IT partner, there's nothing wrong with it. You absolutely want to ask them questions. And if they're a partner that you can trust, they will be happy to answer them and try to help you understand what they're going to be doing. So to give you a few additional ideas for some of these questions that you might ask them if you're not real technical, one that some people ask sometimes is how often will they see code, or where is the code? You don't really need to see the code or understand it if you're not technical, if you're not a developer. You just need to know it's there. So you just want an answer from them about, something along the lines of, yes, we'll be creating a GitHub repository for you. It's a private repository, so your code won't be public. And we will share the URL with you, and you have access to it, etc. Again, you're hiring them maybe because you're not a developer, but you want to know, how are they going to maintain and manage your code? Know that it's there. Start discussing with them, again, getting back to that feedback loop, how frequently you'll be meeting. That might be something that should be fleshed out very early on in the discussions. Maybe it doesn't have to be on the contract, but it should be set out early, a set and predictable schedule for meetings and check-ins so that you can monitor their progress and that you and they can give each other feedback. Again, at a minimum, I would say you want to be checking in with them at least bi-weekly. You might want to also ask them, how do they test the code? Again, I was saying earlier, best practices in modern software development involve a lot of automated testing. So this is maybe just as simple a question as asking, hey, do you write tests for your code? Is your code tested? Can you talk a little about that? Again, much like seeing the code itself, you don't necessarily need to know the nitty-gritty technical details, but you want to know that they're doing it and that they have some practices around that in place. You also want to discuss with them, how will they demo new features to you? As they're developing the system, again, you're going to be getting regular feedback, weekly or bi-weekly meetings and check-ins. You want to check with them, how are they going to demo that to you? Is it going to be just a developer on their laptop? Are they going to have a test website that you can log into and do things yourself? What's that process going to look like? And then at a high level, you want to know what their process is for delivery, for reviews of the current status of the project with you, for different milestones you're going to develop. Again, this is all stuff that will develop as the product begins. It doesn't necessarily need to be decided on the first day, but you want to ask questions about this so that you can have some idea of what their process is, how they work, what they normally do. And as the project gets off the ground, you don't necessarily have to see everything finalized and have all the detail. You just want to know that there's a plan in place, that they have some kind of a process that will handle all of these areas, and that they've got it worked out with you in advance. And a few other areas that you can talk about with them. One would be, what is your role as a stakeholder? You or the people you work with or your organization, what is your role with them? Are you a team member? Are you embedded with them and working with them on a daily basis? Or do they work independently and they just come to you every week or 2 weeks for a check-in and a demo? What is your relationship, your working relationship day to day going to be with them? What happens if a team member leaves? You can ask them that. Do you have the capacity to keep going and provide what you're committing to if a team member leaves? Do you have that additional resilience that we would want? You can sometimes talk about, what else they're doing. Is this team going to be supporting other clients, or are you the sole client? Depending on how complicated your system is and how much work is involved, maybe it's not a big deal that you're one client of 2 or 3, or maybe that's a concern if you're proposing a really complex system that needs a lot of work. Maybe that's a red flag if you talk to a team of 3 people and they are working on 3 clients simultaneously. So that's something you can ask about. In addition, it's a great idea to ask them, what have they produced in the past? Have them give you some real world examples of other clients they've worked with, other systems they've worked on, other solutions that they've developed. Again, you don't necessarily need to know all of the technical ins and outs or too much detail, but you want to get some idea of their experience and their track record. So if they can tell you that they have worked on similar projects with similar systems or with other organizations in the same industry or field as you, that's a really good thing to know. And that's really encouraging. And then finally, you may want to see and can request resumes of key team members and estimates of time on your project. If you're working on a system that has some very specific technical requirements, for example, you're planning on hosting your system in AWS, and it's reasonable to say, hey, can I see resumes? Do we have people who have AWS experience or AWS certifications on their resumes? And it's also reasonable to ask them for some initial estimates of time on your project, with the understanding that, of course, sometimes things can change and estimates are just that, estimates. But there's a big difference between one partner who tells you something is going to take 100 hours to build and somebody who tells you it's going to take 500. And then you can start, maybe if you get differences like that, you can start asking, what's going on here? What are the discrepancies? Why are we getting these very different estimates? So some additional questions that you want to ask and you want to have discussions about before you sign on the dotted line. Once it's built, where does it go? So you've engaged a development team and they write up a system for you. What happens to it after that? Do they just put it up and they put it on a website for you and then it just sits out there? Or is there follow-up to that? Are there going to be future enhancements? Do you have super detailed requirements where you're hiring a company to write a system for you, and as soon as they fulfill those requirements, it's over, one and done, you don't need anything else? Or is this going to be an ongoing system that you're going to be using for years, and maybe you want to start talking about arrangements with them to plan for future enhancements if they can't get everything you initially want, or if your users over time start requesting new features? Related to that, what happens if there are bugs? What happens if there are system outages and maintenance issues, routine maintenance? Even the best systems out there in the world and the best programmers still introduce bugs, still have maintenance issues. There's often things that are out of your control, infrastructural issues, issues with the servers your machine runs on, networking issues, things that, you never know what's going to come up. What's the plan after this system is built? Related to that, do you need tech support once the system goes live? Beyond enhancements and maintenance and fixes like that, is this a system that has a lot of interaction with potential customers or users that rely on it and need to have it up and running? Do you need something like 24/7 support? Do you need a service level agreement where, you have contracted with the service provider to respond to any outages or urgent problems within X number of hours? These are good things to think of upfront. And a lot of the answer to this will entirely depend on what system it is that you're building, what your needs are, and how serious it is. Obviously, there's a big difference between, sort of a site that is relatively low impact and something where if it goes down, it's going to, do massive harm to your business or potentially, put other things at risk. So to sum up, the common denominator of all of these slides where I've been suggesting questions that you can ask and things you can talk about with them is that communication is key. Ask lots of questions about anything that you don't understand or that you want to know. So remember, you're looking for someone that you can trust, and how all these questions go down and the things you discuss with them go a long way to helping you figure out whether or not you can establish trust with them in the first place. A good technology partner will be ready and excited to explain the areas that you'd understand and will be honest and open with you throughout the discussion. And so with that, I thank you all for your time. And I'm going to go to, we have about 10 minutes left, so a little over 10 minutes left. I'm going to go to some time for open-ended questions and discussions. And there on the slide is my email. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about this presentation. I've also put up there our website, acceleration.com, and the email address of my colleague, Amy Baldwin at Acceleration. She does a lot of our initial outreach and contact with potential clients. So if you think that we can help you in some of these areas, feel free to send her an email. Thank you all very much, and I'll take your questions.
Thanks, Brian. That was great. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat box and we'll read them out.
It's very simple, very easy to do, but understanding the storage and the cost optimization around it.
I'm sorry, whoever's speaking, I'm having difficulty hearing you. Hello? Okay, we had a question, and unfortunately, I couldn't really hear the question being asked. Is that person still on the line? Do you want to try again? Or you can post it in the chat.
Brian, I know you've got your emails, but are there other ways that people should connect or engage with you guys?
Sure. Feel free to go to our website. You can learn more about us there. We're also on LinkedIn. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions I'm seeing. So thanks again for a wonderful presentation, Brian. As a reminder to everyone, Riot hosts Lunch and Learns weekly on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find a list of our Lunch and Learns on Meetup where you registered for this event. This event was recorded and will be posted to Riot's YouTube channel and the Meetup page where you registered for this event. Thank you all for joining today. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Oh, I see one question. This question comes from Scott. Are you finding clients are more reluctant to hire consultants because of the current economy?
Actually, I might, hold on one second. Do we still have Steve here? I saw Steve join the call earlier. Okay. Yeah, actually, I was going to defer. One of my colleagues was actually on the call and he deals more with the business development side. I don't know, from what I've seen, I'm, by the way, I'm more on the development side. I'm not one of the business development people. So my answer is just going to be my impression. It's not based on anything scientific. My impression is that it's not really any better or worse than normal. Things tend to go in cycles where, we get busy periods where lots of people are coming for help, and then sometimes it will fall off. And some of that is seasonal. Some of that is based around yearly budgets. But I don't get the sense based on the work that we're doing and the new business that we've been seeing. I don't really get a sense that we're seeing less interest because of the larger economy than normal. People always have problems that need to be solved.
Great, yeah, especially in the tech sphere for sure, you know. Oh, one more question.
Okay, anyone else?
Well, I think that's all for today. I hope
All right.
everyone has a great rest of their day. Brian, thanks again.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you everyone for your time and attention. And I hope that this was helpful to you all.
All right, bye.
Have a great day, everyone.